Mind will flip a little bit, as Andrea Stella alluded to after the race, that he now that it's not close, he's got the kind of freedom to go for it, and maybe we'll see him improve because of that.
Callum, actually, going back to let's go back to 2021 if you want, and the way that it was kind of ebbing and flowing between Max and Lewis. I mean, Max is one of those characters. It doesn't seem like anything phases him, and a different kind of character to Lando, as we know, who kind of wears his heart on his sleeve, and sometimes, he's talked himself down in the past. But you thought with 3 wins in the last four coming into Holland that he might have arrested, that kind of, that mindset, got on top of all of his issues. Do you believe that? I mean, for the freedom now that he might have, is there a pressure off? What did you say to Max, or what did the bosses say to Max, or did they need to say anything?
I mean, look, the first thing I think with that 2021 season, nobody needed to say anything. Everybody knew what the stakes were from pretty much race two. We knew where we were at, and we knew what was gonna sort of transpire. With Lando, I think it's one of those things, and I know that there's been plenty in the past sort of spoken about Lando wearing his heart on his sleeve, and sort of, and a lot of people have alluded it to being sort of some sort of weakness, and I've never sort of seen it that way. I think actually that kind of self-awareness can be such a huge strength, provided you know how to deal with that emotional management, and I think, this will be a test of Lando now. It will be about, emotional management and just sort of, like you say, digging deep. And like we talked about Lewis in 2014, going on to win those next races, that's exactly what he needs. I think obviously the big problem for that is it is also really hard to see Oscar making many mistakes. I think, Jacques, as you alluded to, drivers in general, they don't crash as much and we don't have failures and stuff. But when you look at where those points to settle that difference might come from, it's really hard to see that many of those points are going to come from Oscar Piastri mistakes. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest hurdle. For Lando, is sort of being able to deal with the fact that, yes, I'm sure that he can find something else in him to step his game up, but it's about what your teammate does, and it's really hard to see that sort of changing on Oscar's side.
We talked about it, didn't we, Jacques, in the build-up to that race, and how we were saying it's like a game of tennis. It's Wimbledon final. It is penalties in the World Cup. It is that kind of mano a mano, and now that it's not as tight as it was, will that free Lando up? We know he was quick all weekend until Q3, and then Oscar took control of it, as he so often does.
Well, he was quick too early, and he showed his game. He showed his hand. That wasn't very good poker playing the whole weekend, because then it just took that one quali lap, 12 hundredths of a second, and that changed. Ultimately, it wouldn't have, because he blew his engine, but it would, that 12 thousandth of a second meant the race win. So you have to be careful with that. The shift, the mind shift, will happen for both drivers, because we've seen so many drivers with a huge lead lose it all and lose the championship. That's happened year after year after year. It puts even Piastri in a different position, because it puts a new kind of pressure on his shoulders. Now he's in his mind is the tiniest of mistake and I lose this championship, and maybe he won't drive as serene as he has been for now. So pressure can be good. Lack of pressure can create a really negative spiral, and it's often risky to have a big lead. Unless you have a big lead and you know that there's no position, that's different. But he knows he has a position. He knows that Lando always bounces back.
It's amazing that one of these two is going to be life-changing. We've said that. Once you're a world champion, as you know, Jacques, you can walk into any room, can't you? You've got the red lanyard. So just to come back to you, I mean, that's the thing. Oscar's not going to give this one away from here, is he? How's the team respond? I mean, how are they going to be feeling about this? Just to come back to you on this one, because you could see Zach and Andrea kind of head in hands. Ultimately, again, and I'll come on to this in a moment, it wasn't a Mercedes issue. This was as we understand it, on the chassis side for the oil leak that cost Lando.
Leclerc explains his pit lane collision with Norris. Ferrari's Charles Leclerc was P2 in first practice in Singapore, and P9 in FP2, when he also had an unfortunate clash with Lando Norris in the pit lane. Charles Leclerc outlines pit lane confusion that caused FP2 crash with Lando Norris. Leclerc's collision with Norris was the key talking point of his Friday practice day in Singapore. Charles Leclerc reckons a misjudgment from his Ferrari team was behind the collision with Lando Norris late on in second practice at the Formula One Singapore Grand Prix. Ferrari released Leclerc into the pathway of Norris down the pit lane, causing the Monégasque to drive into the McLaren, which subsequently lost its front wing as it then collided with the wall. This came in the final 20 minutes of a twice red-flagged FP2, with the collision occurring at the second restart, in which lots of cars were trying to leave at once due to the limited running. That included Oscar Piastri being right behind teammate Norris the whole time, something which Leclerc believes is what threw his Ferrari mechanics off. "It was a bit of confusion with the two McLarens going out," Leclerc said. "It looked like they were going out at the same time. So his mechanic, thought that they would go out a bit slow, and so I didn't have the message to stop." On these cases, you kind of rely on the team. But these things happen, and it was also in a tricky moment because with all the red flags, everybody was in such a rush to get out to do some laps. So, it's a combination of things. It's not something you want, but these things happen. Leclerc eventually finished 9th in that session, but he had a positive opening practice, recording the second quickest time, leaving him upbeat for the weekend. "Good FP1, very difficult FP2, he added. "It's been just a very messy FP2 with the traffic and with the red flags and with the pit lane incident. So, lots of things going on which haven't been very positive, but we'll reset and come back stronger. I think the pace is in the car, so that's a good thing. There is also promise in the sister Ferrari, as Lewis Hamilton was 4th in opening practice before finishing 10th in FP2, though was top at stages in the second outing. It's generally been a good day," said Hamilton, who, like Leclerc, awaits his first Grand Prix win of the year. "I felt like we made steps forward today, so I feel like overnight, we probably won't change much. But, of course, trying to refine the setup and see if we can extract a little bit more to get as close as we can to the McLarens." After the second restart of FP2, Leclerc and Norris made contact exiting their garages in the pit lane. As a result, Norris also made contact with the pit wall. Speaking to F1 TV after the session, Leclerc shared his thoughts on the incident. He continued, "In these kinds of cases you rely on the team, but these kind of things happen. It was also in a tricky moment because with all the red flags, everyone was in a rush to get out to do some laps. It's a combination of things. It's not something you want, but these things happen." Check out Blog's latest F1 paddock update video here. Want to stay up to date with what happens in the F1 paddock? Then Blog's F1 paddock update video is the perfect way to do it. Subscribe to Blog's YouTube channel and turn on notifications to never miss the latest episodes. You can now follow us on Spotify as well. Charles Leclerc admitted that a bit of confusion in the Ferrari garage was behind the pit lane tangle with Lando Norris during a chaotic second practice session at the Singapore Grand Prix. The incident unfolded in the final 20 minutes of FP2, when Ferrari released Leclerc straight into Norris' path as both drivers scrambled to get back on track after the second red flag. The McLaren clipped the Ferrari and hit the pit wall, damaging its front wing in the process, much to the dismay of both teams, while Leclerc rejoined the track. The stewards deemed the incident an unsafe release, and subsequently imposed a €10,000 fine on the Scuderia. Confusion and tricky timing. Speaking after the session, Leclerc